Welcome to the T's and C's,
Tisa and Chantal,
also known as the Terms and Conditions.
Welcome to another episode of Surviving Society presents the Terms and Conditions podcast, our weekly COVID-19 global pandemic reflection. Each week we are joined by scholars, teachers, activists to talk about how we can think about this moment politically and sociologically. We are really excited to be joined by the brilliant music scholar, lecturer, teacher, all-round jungle legend, Julia Toppin.
Hello, everyone. I am very pleased to be here, very excited to come back for the second time.
I guess one of the things that we wanted to sort of draw on in particular, what we were talking about in our pre-chat, is what it's like teaching and learning right now online. How this remote, well, we're doing a remote podcast now, but how is remote teaching and lecturing impacting education right now?
I think it's impacting it in quite a few significant ways. I think we'll go through, first of all, I'll talk you through my school's response without naming my school. So about 2 weeks before we actually shut down, my school's kind of quite tight with the Conservative government. So when the head teacher told somebody, yeah, we're closing in 2 weeks, I took that as a given because I know the connections that my school has. I was in an academy chain. So they probably got that direct from source, right? Mm-hmm. That was when people were in the media, they were still having debates about should we shut the schools or not, right? Yeah. And so in the back of my mind, for those last 2 weeks, I was with my kids. I was thinking, well, we're probably going to close, so I need to be having some of that in mind. I was teaching a lot of SEN kids. SEN is special educational needs. So a child may be on a statement perhaps for autism, or they might be on a statement because they have learning difficulties, significant challenges in terms of literacy. They're significantly behind. It couldn't be just 1 or 2 years behind, like, maybe 5 years behind where they should be. And then also, obviously in London, there's lots of children with EAL, which is English as an additional language. So English isn't their home language. Their home language might be Bulgarian, Romanian, Italian, and obviously they cannot access the curriculum in the same way than a child that was born, with English as their home language. So there's all that comes into play. So my school, I felt that they did quite well with it. We had a big assembly. They explained what Corona was very clearly. I really liked the way that they did it. And they gave everyone two blank exercise books. And they talked about the fact that there was a window where people could come in every day for safeguarding. Safeguarding is the fact that children are under our care and we have to make sure that they're legally safe. And if there are any issues that come out in terms of, physical protection, mental protection or whatever, every school has a safeguarding team that deals with those issues because, children are humans and, families have issues. So obviously they couldn't just shut that down. So there's a time window every day where the kids could call in, come in or whatever, and that will get dealt with. And they also dealt with how the kids were on free school meals were going to get fed. So I thought, okay, well done. The kids could come in every other day and pick up enough food for a couple of days. So they seemed to have it in hand. And then we were moving on to Microsoft Teams, and my school already had like booklets. The booklets were a bit too advanced for some of the kids I was teaching. And obviously I found them a bit dry, but I mean, at least they were there. So I think the transition to online teaching was a little bit easier for the school that I worked in because they had these booklets there and they could just slightly adapt the PowerPoints that went with the booklet. So, they're doing the best that they can. They gave children as much resources as they could. And when it's funny because when the head teacher said to the kids that, he might not see some of them until September, they were all hysterically happy and quite bored now. So I was saying to them, you're going to get really bored. And they were like, no, we won't, it's going to be sick. I'm sure that their parents are literally tearing their hair out right now. And I saw all the early stuff on social media with parents actually realizing how much teachers do to keep their children occupied during 6 hours of daytime.
Listen, teachers are the backbone of this country.
Yeah, I don't think people really understood what it was like to be a teacher, because they're not valued in the UK anyway. In UK society, teachers not valued, and I guess what the crisis is showing is where these arbitrary lines are drawn. Prior to the crisis, arbitrary lines were drawn in the financial sector. Value was applied to the financial sector. Values applied to solicitors, lawyers, those people. But now value is applied to teachers, dustbin collectors, the frontline staff. Now it shows you that everyone plays a role. So who draws these arbitrary lines? Who decides who has value now? And it's that kind of hypocrisy that I see in people now that really kind of irks me. Because when you're at the bottom, when I was working at those, people used to treat me like shit. But for what reason? Because I had no value in their eyes. And that's what I'm seeing with the team. Yeah, exactly. This is the thing, because now I'm a hero. Who decides what is value? And as we see things, really, what are going to be the jobs for the kids in the future? Are we going to say, try to be a doctor? Or are you going to say to someone, be a dustman? There's no shame in that. This is where we've gone wrong. As a kid, I was forced into thinking I need to get a job in the city. No other career was open to me. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do this, because there was value to it. You get paid the most. But for what?
I was going to say, just on your point, T, just thinking about who is valued and what is valued, something that me and my family have been talking about quite a lot. I think it's because we've got teenagers in our family, and there's a lot of young people in our family and our wider networks. But thinking sociologically and about value, the way we value or not value childhood in general. Like, I know there's obviously needs to be a lot of public concern with regards to the elderly and those that are most vulnerable to contracting the virus or have it being marginally affected by the impacts of the virus, more likely to be. But just talking about childhood more holistically, I feel really bad for kids right now.
I really do.
I really, really, I just feel like time and time again, the younger generations are just seen as just people that will be all right. They're fine because they're young. Like, it doesn't matter. I don't know. The lack of sort of
care.
Care.
It's care. Like, I've got a friend. Her son is having a breakdown. And he's not coping, and it's about to get quite serious. Institutionally serious, which is obviously terrifying for us as Black people, right? That was terrifying before, but even more terrifying now that they've changed these laws, and who knows if he goes into that system, we're going to see him for the rest of the year. And I think that when we did initially weeks ago call the doctor, they were saying that, they're seeing lots of calls from young people who just, they've not been given a framework to cope with this crisis. All they've been given is, you know what, we're going to go on Zoom. We're just going to take the classroom to your computer that you probably don't have. Or, imagine your average household. How many computers does your average household have? All right,
this is what I'm saying. Exactly.
You're a normal working class family. You might have, if you're lucky, you might have one computer. What if you've got 3 kids? Who's going to be able to do their 3 hours of Zoom lessons? And then, God forbid, what if you have to work on your computer as well? How is that going to work? So that's when something that I touched on before we started recording. I think that workbooks would have been a much better option, right? But it's this whole rush to go digital, this whole rush for everything to be surveilled, this whole, there was a big, the whole conversation about kids learning at home has all been about being online. Right. And as usual, it's the same because the schools have, online homework. They have Bedrock Learning, which is a program that helps them develop their literacy. They have all these online things, but a lot of kids cannot access these things because there's a given that everybody's got broadband at home and everybody's got a computer they can use at home. And I know with a lot of families, that is not the case.
Yeah. We know now the government has intervened in terms of Wi-Fi, and there are some schemes, I think, locally in different boroughs on accessing devices, but still, we don't know. Everyone's got different access to different sorts of devices. The inequalities are just going to be so stark. Just even thinking about those 2 things that you said, Julia, the actual computer screens and then the actual internet.
What you've seen again is again, inequality in kind of in access, but also inequality in terms of quality, right? So these kids, how do you know they're going to get the same quality attention at home? Now, I'm looking at some of their kids' maths homework, right? Or some of their English. And unless someone's got that time to put in, because I haven't done GCSE maths in a long time, so techniques have changed. So I've done one technique from a different curriculum from a long time ago. They're doing a different technique. And so we're at odds. So I'm saying, no, this is the right way to do it. But no, their way is just correct, but I can't understand how they've been learning. So there's a difference in quality. So people who are parents that are sitting at home in their 50s, 40s, 50s, they're from a different curriculum. They understand things differently. So they approach things differently. So there's a conversation, there's a different conversation to have with their kids. And it's just very difficult. And this shift to online, like you're saying, Julia, a lot of parents are not ready for that. That role for them is, they're being off. So when their kids are on it and they're saying, no, I've checked my homework, I've got no homework, the parents don't have a clue. They don't understand how it is or how it goes straight to the kids' phones. And it shows you where there's been a gap, where parents have been just relying on schools to raise their kids.
100%. I have very low engagement from the classes that I've logged into. I'd say maybe about 4 or 5 out of 32 are actually logging into the online system to do their work, and they're having to, and so teachers are having to be calling parents and saying, you know, we've set work for your child, we want them to engage. They're having to do all those encouraging phone calls to get the kids to engage more online. And most of the people that I've spoken to, I think obviously engagement is higher in Key Stage 4, but you know, I've always had a bugbear about how Key Stage 3 always gets abused, because Key Stage 4, which is the GCSE years 10 and 11 are the years leading up to GCSE, right? Key Stage 4 is always a priority. Year 11 are always the ultimate priority, and obviously they wipe that off the table. That's a whole next conversation about how they're going to be. We could talk about that if we have time, but that's a big kettle of fish. So year 11's been wiped off the table. Year 10, all the emails are all about year 10, year 10, year 10. Right, and they have provided stuff for Key Stage 3, but in the back of, you know, they might not be honest about it, but that's what I see. And I've worked in so many schools. Key Stage 3 is always something that does get delivered, but it doesn't get delivered as well as the GCSE stuff, because and that's why they're always doing all that catch up, intervention here, intervention there, intervention everywhere. And I hate intervention at GCSE, which makes me very unpopular with line managers, but I always used to say that intervention begins in the classroom. If you teach them effectively, if we treated Key Stage 3 very seriously and taught them effectively, then we wouldn't have to do all this intervention in Key Stage 4, because they would have the foundation they need to go into their GCSE years. So what we're seeing now again is a re-entrenchment of that divide, where the year 10 is seen as the priority to make sure that when they're in year 11 next year, Corona has not impacted upon them. And the Key Stage 3, years 7, 8 and 9, those 3 years, they're getting work, but
it's not being treated with the same amount of care.
It's not being treated with the same amount of care, I would argue. And also that they need face-to-face. It's just not the same. Right. You know, it's not the same. I couldn't get to all the kids in my classroom when I was physically in front of them, because there was too many and they all had different needs, right? To try and do that over Zoom, you know, I would just, and I hate Zoom anyway because it's not safe. I don't know why everyone's using it. There's so many articles about how unsafe it is that I just refuse to use it.
What you're noticing is a shift, if you're thinking theoretically, in the division of labour, right? So like we've seen work, so the home now is the centre of action. So with schooling, but also with work. Prior to how it should have been the home should have been more in contact with the school. Now it's all on the home to get things right. It's ill prepared for these shifts. Now parents sometimes don't have the patience, and now given that work, if they're all working, if they're working in kind of office conditions, their office will be in a home too in a few weeks. So you've got school and home in the same place. Now, given that most kids are just kids, they won't pay attention because that's what the nature of being a kid is. They're not, some of them are motivated, but like if you're like anything like me when I was growing up, if I could take liberties, I will.
They're all taking
So while my
liberties.
parents are distracted, yeah, I will take a liberty. Instead of going online, I'll be online speaking to my friend at the same time doing my work, because that is the nature of being online. They multitask, right? So if work and on a kind of theoretical level, if the home now is the hub of all action, how do we divide that time up to make sure the kids are doing what they need to pass? So in our house, I kind of we've got a schedule. So the kids have been back at school since it started. So they start at 10 o'clock in the morning, and there's a timetable, but it's a timetable that I have to enforce on a regular basis, consistently.
Yeah.
Consistent, and it takes time. And I didn't realize, you don't realize how much time it takes. I've also got my own stuff, but you have to prioritize. But this is how it's going to have to be. If home is the hub now, how do we manage our time effectively to do the things that we want to do? So in this case, how do we manage our time effectively in home to make sure the kids are interacting with the schools and doing the work to the quality that is required? I've made the kids do their work several times. It wasn't to my motto is, if I don't like it, you can't hand it in. Because it has to look a certain
I know,
way.
you're harsh.
Standard. No, but it's true. It's those basic principles. Julie, what you're saying. So I have the mind that the kids, if they don't understand something at the beginning, how are you going to understand it at the end? And I'm just talking from my own experience. So when I was at school, I paid no attention to fractions and decimals and algebra. So by the time I got to GCSE level, it was like another language, because I didn't understand the fundamentals. And I'm trying to teach the same thing. So when you're showing me your homework, I don't care about the answer. I care about the process. It's the process that I need to understand.
But I feel like those processes, T, and just thinking about what Julia's saying, like as a teacher and thinking about kids with different needs, like for me, like I can't even deep how much of a disaster this would have been for me if I was a child right now, whether it's being in an abusive household, not being very good academically at school. Like it would just been an absolute disaster. And we know that there are so many families in that situation right now. Absolutely. And it's just shit. So in terms of thinking about how I'm just getting work done as a child, like I just needed different sorts of interventions and different learning techniques, and watching recorded lectures. So if you're an undergraduate right now, or watching recorded teaching at secondary school, like it just wouldn't have helped me. And I know there's so many students that are like that it's just so hard.
We know that disproportionately it's going to affect the working class and ethnic minorities.
Absolutely.
This is going to kill people going forward. That's a fact, right? That's a fact.
It's a fact.
People are going to come off the worst. So what do we have to do to limit this, right? Because I know that some kids are not going to get the GCSEs or degrees, or even myself. My PhD's been affected. How I'm self-motivated, how I feel, it's all been affected by this. So how do we mitigate this?
So for me, I think I've always gone into a school and seen kids in need and just gone into what I call my boot camp, my plan, right? So I've got books that I've bought over time, worksheets that I've bought over time. Kids love worksheets, right? Mm-hmm. Good worksheets that I've got over time. I think that children need to be concentrating. First of all, we have to admit they're not going to do X amount of hours a day. I'm not doing X amount of hours a day, and I'm a grown woman. I am distracted. I'm checking the daily body count. I'm reading the stories. I'm reading all the medical journal articles. I could probably write my own medical journal article, or because I know so much, because I'm just reading everything. So we're all distracted. They're going to be distracted too. So they need, maybe an hour, 90 minutes. You should start slowly and build them up. But we should be concentrating on skills. Okay, children that aren't coming from these fancy private schools or whatever, they should just be getting their core skills and practicing them, because if you've got the skills, then by the time you get to GCSE, you're just going to put the content on top of that. So it's building vocabulary, which goes back to reading.
Reading.
Yeah, I can't keep building vocabulary, which goes back to reading, spellings, grammar, getting your good writing down, language analysis, structural analysis. For me, again, people think that the stuff that I do, I know that, other departments don't like it, but, when I've finished with a class, they know how to write an essay, right? They know how to look for techniques. They know how to explain how and why what the writer is doing.
I agree completely. So I think for me, you summed it up better than what I would have. The skills, right? So I focus on with the kids is the how you do it and why you do it. You need to explain to me. So when we're going through stuff, I'm looking to understand if they understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how they do it. Because it's the process. Sometimes you could get the answer wrong, but I need to understand your thought process. So in that, I make them do a lot of reading to make sure their reading's clear, their writing's clear. In the maths, like I said, I said I need help with the maths, so you need to show me how you did it, so I can understand your steps. So it's just about being clear. But also, what I've also done is trying to make them, especially with the older ones. So I'll say, look, read what I'm reading. So the two eldest are reading The Prince. We're going to read The Prince by Machiavelli. So they're reading that, and we're going to have a discussion about The Prince. Because it's, and then what I try to do is contextualize. Is to say to them, look, people use these terms all the time, and they use them incorrectly. Now, what I do is no different than what you do, but it's just at a different level. So now we all talk, right? So we got one at university, two at secondary. So at different levels, but essentially doing the same thing. Because I said it's about being clear. It's about being understood. So if you can't communicate in your language or in your numeracy or talking to me, we have a problem. So
Yeah.
I don't think I'm strict, but I think it's the skills that I wish someone said to me when I was younger, because I was not wayward. I had the ability, but I was lazy. And sometimes this is what happens. They get lazy. So I try to them, when you wake up with me, you have to motivate yourself. So I don't want to do it, but I have to, because there's no one else behind you. If I don't do it, we all starve. So I said, you have to do it. So this is the kind of mindset I'm trying to get people into. We all have to be motivated. We all have to carry each other.
Yeah, I think the most effective thing a person with children in maybe disadvantaged background, whatever you want to call it, is to actually pick a book that is suitable to their child's reading ability. And I can tell you how to do that. All you do is you show the child a book, and there should be a couple of words on each page that they don't know. They shouldn't just be able to read the book fluently, because then it's not challenging them and expanding their vocabulary. They should be able to take a page and go, okay, I don't know this word, and this word. So that way, they got the dictionary or they got Google, they can look up the words and learn them as they go along. And then, once they're getting to their reading, there was a really, oh God, I forgot. I'll have to send you a link. There was a really good reading app for younger kids that's free at the moment.
Oh, let us know. Yeah.
I'll send it to my cousin. I'll send it to you, and you can add links and pass it on.
Brilliant.
So yeah, there's a lot, but again, I feel like I don't want to rely on the internet, but then we're trapped in that space, aren't we? But there's loads of free stuff on the internet. There's loads. You go to the Gutenberg project, there's loads of free books. All the 19th century books and all the classics will all be there. They can read on the screen. I like audiobooks, and I know a lot of audiobooks are free on YouTube as well. That's brilliant. I think that parents should not be afraid of contacting their school and saying, my child cannot access this online. Can you send me some kind of workbook, please? The schools have got more than enough. They must have saved tons of their paper budget by now. So I'm sure it's not going to kill them to print off a couple booklet and put them in the post. And I'm sure there's no way the government hasn't given them money to sort this stuff out, right? So given the nature of how they've responded, even the supermarkets and stuff like that, they're definitely getting money. So as a parent, if you have not got access to the internet or you're struggling, you need to call your school and say, look, Jimmy needs a workbook for English and a workbook for maths, right? Please just send them through. And I seriously doubt any school would deny that request.
So when I've been walking the dog, I've heard some parents say, this is too hard for the kids. This is way too hard for my kid. And I'm like, no, maybe I think what you're trying to say is it's too hard for you. A lot of parents seem to be quite embarrassed. They don't know what the kid knows, right? The kid knows more than them, which is fine. Because I said to the kids, like, if you're doing physics, it's a myth. Go online. Or biology. The parents they're so upset because the kid knows more than them. And
it is difficult.
This guy, I didn't get into an argument with the geezer, but I said to the geezer, well, like, maybe you're finding it difficult. And he goes, maybe. I said, yeah, it's not a problem. I said, I find shit difficult. But I said, I'm not embarrassed to admit it because I don't know everything.
That's right, we can't.
And I think And I think as parents, that's our hubris, right? Parents don't want to admit that their kid knows more than them.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think it is embarrassing for them. And I think when I did my teacher training, I did it in Cornwall, funnily enough, it was great. But what they made us do a whole, it wasn't a BTEC, it was Creative Media Diploma, but they made us do a whole unit as a student, right? And it was terrible. It was so much work. And I tell you what, after that, and the whole point of that exercise was to teach us that, yeah, you can stand in front of them and go, yeah, write this essay and go research this, whatever. But it is actually a lot of work. And you have to bear that in mind sometimes when you're giving children, when you're pacing out the work that you're giving children. And I think that a lot of parents definitely will have issues in terms of the knowledge that's being gathered at this level. But yeah, like you said, they just need to just own it. You know, I can't help you with it. Do the best that you can, send it back to your teacher and see what comes next.
I think that is a really good place to end, guys. And also, just to reiterate, and we say this on the podcast like a lot, young people, they need protection, they need to be valued, but also we learn so much from them as well. Like, so much of like some of our best ideas like come from those that are younger, as well as obviously people that have got experience and that are older. But let's try and nurture them as much as possible and nurture each other in our households as well. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Julia. There's some amazing tips in there that we're going to share via our socials. Thank you.
Oh, I'm happy to help. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on again. Cheers.
Yeah, we'll see you next week, guys. Thank you.
See you next week. See you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.